My name is Wendy Myers. I am 34 years old, and I work nights in the intensive care unit at Riverside Memorial. Strangers trust me when their lungs fail, when monitors scream, when families need one calm voice to tell them what happens next. Last June, I wore a pale blue dress, drove 40 miles to my younger sister Chloe's wedding, and stood beneath a white wooden arbor while a coordinator searched for my name. She searched twice. Then she lowered her voice and said, "I'm sorry, Miss Myers. You were removed from the guest list this morning." Behind her, 120 chairs waited beneath old oak trees, a string quartet tuned beside the garden fountain. Florists carried ivory roses through the heat. Everything looked soft, expensive, and carefully loved. My mother stood 10 feet away in a champagne-colored dress, watching me discover that I did not belong at the wedding I had paid for. I asked her one question. Why? Carol Myers smiled with the same composed expression she used at church funerals and charity luncheons. "Because Chloe deserves one day with her real family," she said, "and you are not really family anymore." The guests nearest the entrance heard her. My Aunt Renee looked at the gravel. The coordinator stopped breathing. My mother expected me to cry, argue, or beg her not to embarrass me. Instead, I placed my wrapped gift on the table and nodded. "Then this is the last day you will ever use me like family." I turned and walked back toward my car. My mother believed she had removed a troublesome name from a printed list. She did not know that the same name appeared on the venue contract, the insurance rider, the catering authorization, and the account that had paid every invoice. She also did not know the groom's father had spent 9 nights in my ICU 2 years earlier. By the time the wedding music stopped, Carol's phone would be ringing without pause. Chloe would be standing in a parking lot in her wedding dress, and a man my mother had never met would ask why the woman who saved his life had just been thrown away. But none of that began at the wedding. It began 12 years earlier, on a Tuesday afternoon, when my father died beside a stack of lumber in the parking lot of the Millbrook hardware store. He was 51, I was 22, one semester from finishing nursing school. Chloe was 15, still wearing silver braces and drawing wedding dresses in the margins of her chemistry notebook. My mother was 49 and had never paid a household bill without first asking my father which envelope it belonged in. The call came during my pharmacology lab. By the time I reached Millbrook County Hospital, my father's work boots were in a plastic bag beneath the gurney, and my mother was repeating the same sentence to anyone who touched her shoulder. "He was fine this morning." There are sentences families say when facts are too heavy to hold. That became ours. He was fine this morning. He drank coffee at the kitchen counter. He reminded Chloe to return a library book. He kissed my mother near the refrigerator. Then, 6 hours later, a blood vessel in his brain opened, and every plan our family had made began leaking out with it. The funeral filled First Baptist Church. My father had sold nails, paint, lawnmower belts, and practical advice to half the county. Men who rarely cried stood in the aisle with red faces. Women brought casseroles and foil pans, and spoke to my mother as if grief had made her fragile enough to crack. Chloe slept in Dad's old flannel shirt for a week. I washed dishes. That was how I handled fear even then. I found the nearest useful thing and made it clean. 3 nights after the funeral, I came downstairs at 2 in the morning and found my mother sitting on the kitchen floor. Bills surrounded her in uneven circles. The refrigerator light spilled across her bathrobe. One hand covered her mouth, the other held a mortgage notice stamped "past due" in red. I had never seen Carol look uncertain. She chaired committees. She corrected restaurant menus with a pencil. She could make 6 relatives change holiday plans using one quiet sigh. That night, she looked small. I sat beside her and read the papers. The mortgage was 3 months behind. My father's life insurance policy had lapsed the previous winter. The hardware store offered no pension. Credit cards carried balances I had never seen. Our checking account held less than $800. My father had protected us from fear by hiding it. My mother looked at me with wet, furious eyes. "Chloe cannot know. Mom, she just lost her father. She will not lose this house too." I told her I would graduate in May. I told her I had already interviewed for a night position at Riverside because nights paid more. I said we could catch up slowly, one bill at a time. She gripped my wrist. "You can help," she whispered. but it has to come through me. I did not understand. If Chloe knows you are paying for things, she will feel like a burden. She will start giving up what she wants. College, design school, everything. Let me keep the household steady. Let her believe her father left enough. That would be a lie. It would be protection. I was 22, grieving, exhausted, and desperate to keep my sister's world from collapsing. My mother knew exactly which part of me to ask, so I promised. At the time, I believed I was protecting Chloe's childhood. I did not realize I was giving my mother ownership of every sacrifice I would make. I graduated 5 months later, passed my nursing boards, and accepted a night shift ICU position 90 minutes from Millbrook. My starting apartment had 1 bedroom, beige walls, and a radiator that knocked like someone trapped inside it. I bought a used couch, a folding table, and blackout curtains. Everything else waited. My first automatic transfer to my mother was $900. The next was $1,100. By Christmas, nearly 40% of every paycheck went home. The mortgage became current, the electricity stayed on. Chloe received new glasses, choir fees, and a repaired transmission in the car she used for school. When the furnace failed in January, I worked 6 consecutive nights and sent the replacement cost before my mother finished getting estimates. Every payment passed through Carol's account. Every receipt carried Carol's name. At first, I did not mind. I was proud that my sister could still complain about ordinary things. A difficult teacher, a girl who copied her haircut, a winter formal dress that fit badly at the waist. Normal problems are a luxury in a grieving house, and I was buying them for her. The first warning came at Thanksgiving. My mother stood at the head of the table while Aunt Renee, 3 cousins, and 2 church friends bowed their heads. She thanked God for comfort, for health, and for the small insurance blessing Tom left us, which has kept this family on its feet. There was no insurance blessing, there was me. I looked down at the pie on my plate and waited for my mother to glance in my direction. She did not. After dinner, I found her wrapping leftovers in the kitchen. You told them Dad's insurance paid the mortgage. She kept folding foil. It was simpler. You could have said we were managing. People ask questions when widows say they are managing. They admire them when they say they planned. We did not plan. Her hands stopped. Do you want Chloe hearing that her sister is paying for the food in her mouth? No. Then let me carry the appearance of this family, Wendy. You carry what you are good at. I should have argued. Instead, I washed the dishes. That became the arrangement. I handled money. My mother handled meaning. Over the next 4 years, I paid for Chloe's braces, her senior trip, application fees, a summer design program, and half of her college expenses. When she was accepted into the State University's design program, I cried in a medication room between patient checks. Then I volunteered for overtime. $38,000 went toward her degree. Chloe believed it came from our father's life insurance and our mother's careful budgeting. Carol never corrected her. Worse, she began using my absence to explain everything else. When I missed Chloe's choir concert because a patient coded 20 minutes before shift change, my mother told her I had chosen work. When I missed her 17th birthday dinner because 2 nurses called out, Carol said city life had made me selfish. When I mailed a gift, my mother placed it on the table without the card because, as she later claimed, the envelope must have been lost. I did not know any of this then. I only noticed that Chloe's messages changed. At 15, she sent me photographs of ugly shoes, screenshots of jokes, and midnight complaints about algebra. At 18, she wrote, "Thank you for the gift." At 20, she wrote, "Hope work is going well." Politeness can be colder than anger. Anger still believes a relationship is worth fighting over. Politeness is what people use when they have already moved you outside the house. I blamed distance. I blamed my schedule. I blamed myself. My mother encouraged all 3. You know how sensitive Chloe is, she would say. She thinks you do not want to be involved. I call. You call when you are driving. I visit. You leave early. I work nights, and she is supposed to understand that forever? Every conversation ended with me apologizing for a crime I had financed. By the time Chloe graduated, I had become a rumor in my own family. I drove to the ceremony after a 12-hour shift, changed clothes in a gas station restroom, and sat alone near the back of the university arena. My mother occupied the front row with Aunt Renee and cousins who had never paid $1 toward Chloe's education. When Chloe crossed the stage, I stood and clapped until my hands hurt. Afterward, she posed beside a glittered sign that read, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Carol held the flowers I had purchased. Chloe hugged me quickly, then turned toward the photographer. I told myself the degree mattered more than the credit. That lie was easier to carry than the truth. The truth was that my mother was not merely accepting gratitude. She was writing me out, one event at a time, and using my silence as proof that I had never been there. I could read danger in a patient's heartbeat before the monitor sounded. I could not recognize it inside my own family. Not yet. The following morning, my mother called while I was leaving the hospital. Her voice sounded pleased. "Chloe loved the flowers," she said. "I know. I bought them." A pause opened between us. "Do not start keeping score now, Wendy." I stood in the parking garage, with sunlight cutting through the concrete levels, and understood that she was afraid of the truth. Not guilty. Afraid. Guilt looks backward. Fear watches the door. Then she softened. "Your sister had a beautiful day. Isn't that what matters?" I said yes because saying yes had become the toll I paid to remain connected to them. 6 years later, Carol would use that same question without speaking it. Wasn't Chloe's beautiful day what mattered? Wasn't my humiliation a reasonable price? The answer had always been yes. Until she crossed my name off the list. What my mother could not see was that the daughter she trained to disappear had spent 12 years learning exactly how to stay calm while everything around her collapsed quietly. I lived in the same one-bedroom apartment in Columbus. I had added a second-hand bookshelf, a small table, and a fern I kept alive. My days were quiet. My nights belonged to Riverside Memorial, where I worked 12-hour shifts and learned to recognize fear before people admitted it. At work, I was visible. Doctors asked for my judgment. New nurses followed me into rooms. Families remembered my name even when grief erased everything else. I could calm a panicked son, explain a ventilator to a terrified wife, and catch a dangerous rhythm before the machine decided to complain. At home, I was useful. To my family, those were not the same thing. My mother visited my apartment twice in 8 years. The second time, she arrived carrying a grocery store cake and walked through every room slowly, opening cabinets as if poverty might be hiding behind the plates. She photographed my living room, the narrow kitchen, and the small balcony facing the parking lot. I asked why. "You never send pictures," she said. "People ask how you are." Months later, Aunt Renee mentioned the photographs at a funeral luncheon. "Your mother worries about you," she said. "She showed us your apartment, said you were barely scraping by." I laughed once, sharp enough to make Renee blink. Barely scraping by. I had sent Carol almost 40% of every paycheck since I was 23. My apartment was not evidence that I was struggling. It was evidence that somebody else was living on the part of my life I never bought. My mother had turned the receipt into an accusation. I confronted her that evening. "You told people I cannot afford anything. I said you live simply. You said I was barely scraping by." Renee exaggerates. "You showed them photographs because they care about you." "No, Mom. You showed them a version of me that made your version of yourself look stronger." The line went quiet. Then she sighed, tired and wounded, as if I had interrupted her while performing a kindness. "Do you hear yourself? Everything is a transaction with you now." That sentence ended the argument because it touched the oldest bruise. She had trained me to believe that naming a sacrifice contaminated it. If I mentioned money, I was keeping score. If I asked for credit, I was demanding applause. If I questioned her story, I was threatening Chloe's peace. So I changed the subject. Carol won by making truth feel vulgar. For a while, I dated a physical therapist named Daniel Reed. Dan was patient and better at boundaries than anyone I knew. We met in the hospital cafeteria. He watched me eat crackers for dinner and handed me half his sandwich. We lasted almost 2 years. He left without anger. "You give everyone the best part of you," he said one Sunday morning, standing beside my apartment door. "Your patients get your focus, your mother gets your money, your sister gets your guilt. I get whatever remains after you have proved you can survive another week. I can change." "I think you mean you can work harder." He kissed my forehead and carried his overnight bag away. For months, I resented him for being correct. My family had become a second job with no schedule and no end of shift. Every transfer, emergency, apology, and forgotten invitation kept me employed in the role my mother had written for me: provider without authority, daughter without recognition, sister without access. Then Chloe moved to Columbus. She accepted a junior design position at a small architecture firm 20 minutes from my apartment. When I heard, I believed proximity might repair what distance had damaged. I bought her a set of drafting pencils and sent a message offering to help her move. She replied 3 days later, "Mom already handled it, but thank you." The housewarming appeared on social media the following weekend. Chloe stood in her new living room holding a paint roller. Carol stood beside her wearing one of my father's old work shirts, like a costume of family history. Cousins filled the room. Aunt Renee held a tray of cupcakes. I was working that night, but nobody had asked whether I could trade shifts. When I called my mother, she sounded surprised. "We sent you the details." "No, you did not. It must have gotten lost. It was a text invitation." "Then perhaps you overlooked it. You are always exhausted." I checked every thread, every archived message, and every email, even though I already knew. There was nothing. The next year, Chloe's 25th birthday dinner happened at a restaurant I passed every night on my way to Riverside. I learned about it from a photograph posted while I was stopped at the traffic light outside. My mother had asked for my work schedule 2 weeks earlier, "just so I can pray over your nights," she had said. The dinner fell on my only free Saturday. That detail frightened me more than the exclusion. Missing invitations could be explained as accidents. Scheduling around my availability required intention. I began writing things down, not because I planned revenge. Nurses document because memory becomes unreliable when people are scared. Dates, calls, payments, events, explanations. I created a password-protected file and recorded every contradiction I could remember. The mortgage transfers, Chloe's tuition, the apartment photographs, the missing housewarming invitation, the birthday dinner, my mother's questions about my schedule. For the first time, I looked at my family like a patient whose symptoms did not match the diagnosis. The pattern was obvious once I stopped calling it love. Carol was not simply taking credit for helping Chloe. She was isolating us from each other while controlling the explanation on both sides. To me, Chloe was busy, sensitive, and disappointed. To Chloe, I was detached, judgmental, and unavailable. My mother stood between us, translating silence into whatever story served her. I tried calling Chloe directly more often. Most calls went unanswered. When she did answer, she sounded careful. One evening, I asked if something had happened between us. "No," she said too quickly. "We are just different people now." Different does not have to mean strangers. A pause. "Mom says you prefer it this way." My hand tightened around the phone. "What exactly does Mom say? That you do not like family obligations, that coming home makes you feel trapped, that you help financially because money is easier for you than showing up." I stood in my kitchen, staring at the automatic transfer confirmation glowing on my laptop. "Chloe, have you ever wondered where that financial help came from?" Another pause, longer this time. Then a door opened in the background. "Mom just got here," Chloe said. "I have to go." Carol called me less than 5 minutes later. Her voice was soft enough to cut. "What were you doing?" "Talking to my sister. About money. About us. You promised me." I was 22. A promise does not expire because you become resentful. I am not resentful. I am erased. You want Chloe to feel indebted to you? I want her to know me. She knows exactly who you are. The cruelty of that sentence was not in the words, it was in the confidence. My mother believed she had authored Chloe's understanding so completely that my own voice could no longer revise it. Then she used the old weapon. "Your father would be ashamed to hear you asking for recognition." I ended the call before she could hear me cry. After that, I stopped sending transfers automatically. I did not stop helping. I paid specific bills directly when needed, but I removed my mother's control over the flow. The first month, she called within hours of the missing deposit. "Was there a bank problem?" "No." "Then why is the transfer late?" "It is not late. It is finished." Silence. What does that mean? It means if Chloe needs something, she can ask me. If the house needs a repair, send me the invoice. I am not depositing money into your account anymore. You are punishing us, I am changing a system. Your sister will suffer. Then give her my number. Carol hung up. For 3 months, nothing happened. No emergency invoices, no calls from Chloe, no requests. The house remained standing. The lights stayed on. I began saving money for the first time in over a decade. That should have felt freeing. Instead, I waited for punishment. It arrived, disguised as an engagement announcement. A photograph appeared in the family group text. Chloe's left hand resting over a man's, a diamond ring catching afternoon light. The caption read, "We said yes." His name was Eric Calloway, a civil engineer with kind eyes and a crooked smile. I had never met him. The family thread exploded with congratulations. I sent Chloe a private message. Dad would have pretended to interrogate him and then secretly loved him. "I am happy for you, Chloe, truly." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then she sent a close photograph of the ring and wrote, "I cannot stop staring at it." The exclamation point mattered. Warmth had become rare enough between us that I noticed punctuation like a patient's pulse. I offered to help with anything she needed. Before Chloe answered, my mother replied in the family thread, "Everything is handled, sweetheart. We have our little team." Little team. 2 words that closed a door while sounding affectionate. I told myself I would attend the wedding, smile, and avoid conflict. Weddings are public enough that even my mother could not pretend I did not exist. 2 weeks later, she called using the voice she reserved for emergencies and requests. "Wendy, there is one last thing Chloe needs." I almost laughed at the phrase, "one last thing." In our family, last things reproduced. What is it? The venue. Chloe had fallen in love with the Arbor House, a restored garden estate outside Columbus. A June Saturday had opened after a cancellation. The venue required a $7,000 deposit within 48 hours. "I cannot cover it," Carol said, "and Chloe cannot know." There it was again. Why not? "She thinks I saved enough from your father's insurance." There was no insurance. I know that. Does she? My mother breathed slowly. "Do not destroy her wedding before it starts." I would be telling her the truth. You would be handing her a bill disguised as honesty. I looked at my savings account. For the first time in years, it contained enough to build something for myself. Then I imagined Chloe beneath oak trees, holding our father's watch, smiling without caution. "How much is the total venue cost?" $21,000. My chest tightened. Carol rushed forward. "I will repay you in installments. I only need the deposit now, please, Wendy. Let her have 1 day untouched by money." The request contained every trap she had ever used. Chloe's happiness, my father's memory, the shame of appearing selfish, and the promise that this sacrifice would finally end the debt between us. I knew better. I agreed anyway. 2 days later, I met Carol at the Arbor House. The coordinator introduced herself as Bree Hartley. She was young, precise, and carried a white folder against her chest. She led us through the garden, explaining weather plans, catering access, and ceremony timing. Carol answered every question as if she were the client. Then Bree placed the contract on the desk. "The card holder needs to sign as client of record," she said. For the first time in 12 years, my mother could not place her name over mine. I signed. Wendy Myers, client of record. My card paid the deposit. My billing address filled the first page. My initials appeared beside the clause, stating that changes affecting the client required written authorization. Carol watched the pen move and smiled. She believed a signature was only paperwork. She had no idea it was the first witness I had ever created. The contract should have changed everything. For 12 years, every payment I made had entered my mother's hands and emerged wearing her name. This time, the truth sat in a white folder with my signature at the top, my card number on file, and a clause stating that no material change involving the client could be made without written approval. I left the Arbor House feeling something close to relief, not victory. I was not planning to expose anyone. I simply liked knowing that one record existed outside my mother's control. A clean document, no memory to challenge, no relative to confuse, no emotional argument to twist. Just ink. Carol seemed unconcerned. On the drive back to Millbrook, she called and thanked me with a warmth that sounded almost genuine. "You have given your sister the wedding she dreamed about," she said. "Someday she will understand how much the family did for her." The family? You know what I mean. I know exactly what you mean. She changed the subject before the silence became dangerous. The next 13 months unfolded in two separate versions. In the version my bank account knew, I paid the venue deposit, the spring installment, and the final balance. $21,000 left my savings. The charges were itemized, time-stamped, and confirmed through emails addressed to Wendy Myers, client of record. In the version Chloe knew, our mother had somehow managed the venue through careful budgeting and the last remains of Dad's insurance. I waited for Carol to tell her the truth. She never did. Instead, she made the wedding planning process another private country for which I had no passport. There were dress appointments, menu tastings, floral meetings, bridal showers, and invitation assembly nights. I learned about most of them afterward through photographs. Chloe and 6 bridesmaids in matching robes, Carol holding ivory fabric against her shoulder, Aunt Renee sealing envelopes beside bowls of candy. Every image presented the same cheerful evidence. The wedding had a family, and I was not part of it. I still received messages from my mother asking practical questions. Could I increase the venue payment date by 3 days? Did my card have enough available credit for the security hold? Would I be working the weekend before the wedding in case she needed help moving decorations? She wanted my resources near the event, not my presence inside it. At first, I answered every question. Then I began answering only the ones connected to the contract. My mother noticed. "You sound formal," she said during one call. "I am discussing a $21,000 agreement. You never used to talk like this. I never used to have my name on the paperwork." She went quiet. The signature had become a small light under a locked door. She could not extinguish it, so she pretended not to see it. Chloe and I exchanged occasional messages during those months, nothing deep, but warmer than before. She sent me a photograph of her wedding shoes and asked whether nurses knew any tricks for surviving heels. I told her to bring flats, blister pads, and a husband willing to carry her if necessary. She sent 3 laughing faces. I stared at them like they were a letter from home. A week later, I asked if she wanted to have dinner. "Just us," she agreed. Then, 2 hours before we were supposed to meet, she canceled. "Mom needs me for invitation stuff. Rain check?" I typed, "Of course," then deleted it. I wrote, "I would still like to see you. Pick another night." She suggested the following Thursday. We met at a small restaurant near her office. Chloe arrived 10 minutes late, apologizing, carrying fabric samples, and looking more like our father than I was prepared for. She had his habit of rubbing one eyebrow when she was nervous. For the first few minutes, we talked about safe things: her job, my unit, Eric's inability to choose between gray and navy suits. Then Chloe folded her napkin and asked, "Can I ask you something without you getting mad?" "I will try. Why did you stop coming home?" The question landed so cleanly that I almost admired my mother's work. "I did not stop coming home." Chloe looked down. "Mom said after Dad died, you could not wait to leave. I went to Columbus for a nursing job. She said you chose the farthest hospital that offered you a position. Riverside paid a night differential. We needed money." Ween. The word escaped her before she could hide it. I held her eyes. "Yes, we." A waiter approached, and Chloe immediately asked for more water. The moment broke, but it did not disappear. It remained between us for the rest of dinner, breathing. When we left, she hugged me longer than usual. "Mom says you do not like talking about the past," she whispered. "Your mother says many things for me." Chloe pulled back. I could see a question beginning, but her phone rang. Carol's name glowed across the screen. My sister looked from the phone to me. Then she declined the call. It was the first visible crack in my mother's control. Carol called me before I reached home. "What did you say to Chloe?" "We had dinner." "What did you say?" "That depends. What are you afraid I said?" Her voice hardened. "This wedding is not the time for you to reopen old wounds." "The wounds are open, Mom. You just keep covering them with tablecloths. You promised not to burden her." "I promised to protect a 15-year-old. Chloe is 27. She is under enormous stress." She asked why I left. "And what did you tell her?" "The truth has not arrived yet, but it is getting closer." My mother hung up without another word. After that dinner, invitations became a strange subject, Aunt Renee mentioned that hers had arrived in early April. Cousins posted photographs of thick ivory envelopes with wax seals. My mailbox remained empty. When I asked Chloe, she sounded confused. Mom said yours went out first. It did not arrive. I will check. The next day, Carol called. Chloe says you are making an issue about the invitation. I asked one question. You know you are invited. Do I? Do not be dramatic. Send me the details. I already did. Send them again. She promised she would. Nothing arrived. 3 weeks passed. Then an envelope appeared beneath my apartment door. Not in the mailbox, beneath the door. It was the wedding invitation, hand-addressed in Chloe's unmistakable printing. Inside, beneath the formal card, she had written one sentence. I mailed this myself. Please come. I sat on the floor with the invitation in my lap. There are moments when hope feels less like comfort and more like a risk. My sister had noticed something. Perhaps not the whole pattern, but enough to bypass our mother. I called her immediately. She answered on the second ring. You got it. I got it. Are you coming? There is no version of my life where I miss your wedding. The line went silent. Then Chloe exhaled. Mom said weddings make you uncomfortable. Your wedding does not. She said you told her you might work instead. I arranged the entire weekend off months ago. Another silence. This one was active, almost mechanical. I could hear my sister fitting facts together. Why would she say that? I wanted to tell her everything. The mortgage, tuition, missed invitations, schedule manipulation, and thousands of dollars moving through Carol's accounts. But I heard strain in Chloe's voice. The wedding was 6 weeks away. I still believed truth could be timed like medication, administered when the patient was ready. I think you should ask her, I said. Wendy, I will answer anything you ask me, but I will not choose your questions for you. That was more honest than silence, and less explosive than accusation. At the time, it felt wise. Now I know it was still fear wearing professional language. Chloe changed the subject, but the warmth remained. We spoke for nearly an hour about the dress, the music, and Eric's family. She told me his father, Harold, had almost died 2 years earlier after a heart attack. He still talks about some night nurse who saved him, she said. They never found her. My fingers stopped against the couch cushion. Which hospital? Riverside, I think. I asked what month. January. For a second, an image surfaced. Silver hair against a white pillow, large hands, a wife standing in the doorway with her coat still on. Bed 9. A dangerous rhythm at 3 in the morning. But hospitals contain hundreds of almost connections. I let the thought pass. 2 years earlier, Harold Calloway had arrived in my ICU after an emergency cardiac procedure. He was 61 then, stubborn, frightened, and determined to make jokes while his body failed. On his third night, his monitor showed a brief abnormal rhythm. Nothing dramatic, a handful of beats that returned to normal before the alarm fully registered. I stayed. I ordered new labs through the resident, checked his lines, and moved the crash cart outside his room. 20 minutes later, his heart stopped. Because we were ready, it restarted quickly. The next morning, Harold watched me adjust his IV and said, "You knew." I suspected. "You stayed." "That is my job." "No," he said, "night shift is when you find out who stays." For the rest of his admission, he called me the one who stays. His family knew only my first name because hospital badges did not show surnames. After discharge, they mailed a thank you letter to Wendy, ICU night nurse. Hospital privacy rules prevented staff from confirming identities, and the letter was returned. I never expected to see him again. I certainly did not expect him to become my sister's father-in-law. At the time, I did not know Eric's father was the man from bed 9. I only knew Chloe's story made my chest tighten for reasons I could not explain. 5 weeks before the wedding, Carol began asking about my schedule again. "What time will you arrive?" "Before 5. "Will you come alone?" "Yes." "Are you staying overnight?" "No." Each question sounded ordinary. Together, they felt like surveillance. I opened my documentation file and added the date. Then the venue emailed the final packet. The message went to me as client of record and copied Carol as day of contact. Attached were the timeline, guest count, insurance certificate, vendor entrances, and payment confirmation. At the top of the first page, in bold letters, appeared Clay int of record, Wendy Myers. Below that, Clay ent arrival and final authorization, 5 p.m. I read the lines twice. Then I imagined my mother reading them. For 13 months, she had treated my signature as invisible machinery. Now a coordinator would greet me by name at the entrance, in front of Chloe, Eric, both families, and half of Millbrook. The truth did not need a speech, it only needed me to arrive. The night before the wedding, Chloe called. Her voice was low. "Did you pay for the Arbor house?" I sat up in bed. "Why are you asking?" "I heard Mom arguing with someone about the final packet." "What did she say?" "That your name should not be anywhere guests could see it." The room became very still. "Chloe, where is she now?" "At the hotel. She thinks I am asleep." "Listen to me. I am coming tomorrow. We can talk before the ceremony." "Is it true?" I closed my eyes. "Yes." Her breath broke. Before either of us could say more, a knock sounded through her phone. Carol's voice followed from the hallway. "Chloe, are you awake?" My sister whispered, "Tomorrow." The call ended. At 7 the next morning, my mother phoned the Arbor house and crossed my name off the guest list. She believed removing me would remove the truth, but truth had learned where the ceremony was. I woke before 6 on the morning of the wedding. Years of night shifts had taught my body to mistrust daylight. Still, I was awake before the alarm, staring at the ceiling while the final packet sat open on my kitchen table. Client of record, Wendy Myers. They did not know they had become dangerous. I showered, dried my hair, and steamed the pale blue dress I had bought months earlier. I chose small silver earrings, low heels, and the pearl bracelet my father had given me when I graduated high school. Then I opened the dresser drawer where I kept the one thing of his nobody else had claimed: his watch. It was plain steel, scratched along the band, with a face slightly yellowed by age. He had worn it every day at the hardware store. The week after his funeral, while relatives sorted his clothes and tools, I slipped it into my pocket because the idea of strangers dividing him into boxes made me feel sick. I had carried it through 3 apartments and 12 years. In April, I took it to a jeweler. He cleaned the movement, replaced the crystal, and kept the worn band because I told him the scratches mattered. I wrapped the watch in tissue paper and placed it in a small box. On the card, I wrote, "Dad would have walked you down the aisle. Something of his should." At 9 that morning, Chloe texted me. "Are you still coming?" "Yes," I wrote. "I will be there before 5. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then returned. "Please come straight to me if Mom says anything." I stared at the message. She knew. Not everything, perhaps, but enough to be afraid of what our mother might do. I replied, "I will." Carol called 20 minutes later. Her tone was light. "What time did you say you were arriving?" "Before 5. There is no need to be early. Guests are not seated until 5:30. "I am meeting Chloe." A pause. "She will be busy. She asked me to come to her." Another pause, longer. "Wendy, today is not the day for emotional confrontations." "I agree. I need you to promise you will not discuss money." "I am not promising anything to you today." Her breath sharpened. "Do not ruin your sister's wedding because you suddenly need recognition. I am coming to watch Chloe get married." "That is all? That is all I am discussing with you." She ended the call. I added the time to my notes without thinking. Documentation had become instinct. At noon, I received a message from Bree Hartley, confirming my arrival as client of record. She asked whether I wanted to review final adjustments at 5. "Yes," I replied. At 12:15, Carol called again. I let it ring. At 12:20, she sent a text. "The family is gathering early for photographs. Please do not come before 5:30. It will confuse the schedule." I forwarded the message to Chloe. No answer came. At 2, I left Columbus. The June sky was bright and empty. Fields passed on both sides of Route 33, green and orderly, as if the entire state had agreed to behave. The gift box sat on the passenger seat. At red lights, I practiced what I would say to Chloe. I paid for the venue. I helped with school. Mom kept us apart. Every sentence sounded too large for a wedding dress. I decided I would begin with the simplest truth. I never stopped loving you. The Arbor House appeared beyond stone gates and rows of white fencing. Cars filled the gravel lot. Vendors moved between buildings carrying trays, flowers, and folded linens. I arrived at 5:10. The welcome table stood beneath a wooden arbor draped in greenery. A guest book lay open beside a framed photograph of Chloe and Eric. Behind the table, two coordinators checked names and directed guests toward the garden. I joined the short line. Ahead of me, cousins laughed and waved. People I had not seen in years gave me uncertain smiles, the kind offered to someone whose story has already reached the room. When my turn came, I placed one hand on the gift box and said, "Wendy Myers." The younger coordinator scanned the page, then scanned it again. She called quietly to Bree. Bree approached carrying the white contract folder. The moment she saw me, recognition crossed her face, then concern. She looked at the guest list, and her mouth tightened. "I am sorry," she said. "There seems to be an issue." "What issue?" Her eyes moved toward the garden entrance. "You were removed from the guest list this morning." The words were so absurd that for a second I thought I had misheard them. Removed by whom? Before Bree could answer, my mother appeared. Carol wore champagne silk, pearl earrings, and tiny white flowers pinned into her hair. She looked exactly as she had wanted to look. Dignified, composed, admired. Aunt Renee hovered several feet behind her. I held my mother's eyes. "Did you remove me?" She glanced at the people waiting behind me, then raised her voice just enough to make the answer public. "Chloe deserves one peaceful day with the people who have actually been part of her life." My face felt cold. "I am her sister." Carol smiled. "By blood, perhaps, but you have not acted like family in years." A cousin behind me stopped whispering. Bree shifted the folder against her chest. I asked, "Does Chloe know?" This decision was made for her. That was not my question. My mother stepped closer. "Do not make a scene." The sentence almost made me laugh. She had erased my name in public and wanted me to preserve her dignity. Then she said the words that finally ended something inside me. "Why would we invite someone who is not really family?" Nobody moved. I looked at the woman who had accepted my money, redirected my love, and converted my silence into evidence against me. For 12 years, I had argued with her using explanations, work schedules, bank transfers, intentions, grief. That morning, I had decided to arrive with truth. Instead, she gave me clarity. I nodded once. "Then today is the last day you will ever use me like family." Her expression changed, only slightly, a small break behind the eyes. She had expected pain. She had not expected withdrawal. I placed Chloe's gift on the table. Bree whispered, "Miss Myers, please wait. I need to review." "It is all right." It was not all right, but nurses learn that some sentences are instructions, not descriptions. I turned and walked toward the parking lot. The gravel was loud beneath my shoes. Music drifted from the garden. Someone behind me called my name, but it was Aunt Renee, and I did not stop. I reached my car without crying. That felt like victory for approximately 30 seconds. Then I sat behind the wheel, closed the door, and lost the ability to breathe correctly. I placed both hands on the steering wheel. Airway clear. Breathing rapid. Circulation intact. The clinical inventory came automatically, a bridge built over panic. I started the engine and drove. 20 minutes north. I pulled onto the shoulder because the road blurred. The blue dress tightened across my chest. I lowered the window and let hot air enter. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Carol. No call from Chloe. That hurt more than I expected, even though I knew my mother probably had her phone. I should have called my sister immediately. Instead, I called Riverside. The charge nurse Monica answered. "You are supposed to be at a wedding," she said. "Plans changed." She heard my voice and stopped joking. "What happened? Do you need another nurse tonight?" "Wendy, I am asking about staffing. We are covered. I can come in if the census rises." "Where are you?" "On Route 33. Pull over." "I am pulled over." "Good. Stay there for a minute." "I am fine." You sound like every family member who says they are fine before fainting. Despite everything, I smiled. Monica told me to drink water, breathe slowly, and call her in 15 minutes. After we hung up, I stared toward Columbus. The hospital waited there with clean rules. A patient either had a pulse or did not. A medication was given or missed. A chart held names that could not be erased because someone felt threatened by them. Work had always been the place I went when family made me feel useless. That realization arrived without mercy. My mother had spent 12 years telling Chloe I chose work over family, and here I was, rejected once, immediately asking for a shift. I had been trained to disappear into usefulness. I opened my messages and typed to Chloe. I came. Mom removed me from the list. I left your gift. I love you. The message showed undelivered. Her phone was off. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. No change. Back at the Arbor House, Bree Hartley was carrying the white folder into her office. I learned what happened next from Bree, Eric, Chloe, and Harold in the weeks after the wedding. Their accounts differed in details, but not in sequence. Bree closed her office door and opened the contract. She found my signature on the first page. She found my initials beside the changes clause. Then she found the payment ledger. Deposit, Wendy Myers. Second installment, Wendy Myers. Final balance, Wendy Myers. $21,000, paid in full. She called the office manager and explained that the mother of the bride, listed only as day of contact, had ordered the paying client removed from her own event without written authorization. The manager used a phrase Bree later repeated to me, "Fix it before the ceremony starts." Bree called Carol. My mother declined the call. Bree called again, declined. A third call rang while family photographs were being finished near the fountain. Carol silenced it and turned her face back toward the camera. Bree left the office with the contract folder. She crossed the courtyard toward the ceremony lawn, moving quickly enough to draw attention. Eric saw her. He was standing with his father near the garden entrance, adjusting his cufflinks. He stepped into her path. "Is there a problem?" Bree tried to give him a neutral answer. "There is a client authorization issue." "What does that mean?" She looked toward the white chairs, then back at him. "The woman who was turned away at the gate is the client of record for this event." Eric stared at her. "What woman?" "Wendy Myers." He took the folder from her hands and read my name. "That is Chloe's sister." "Yes. She paid for this?" "The entire venue." Behind him, Harold Calloway went still. He had heard one name, Wendy. He stepped closer and looked at the contract as if it were a medical chart. "What does she do?" he asked. Eric frowned. "She is a nurse. ICU, I think." "Where?" "Riverside Memorial." Harold pressed one hand against his chest. For 2 years he had remembered a night nurse whose surname he never knew. A woman who saw danger before the alarm, stood beside his bed at 3 a.m, and refused to leave when leaving would have been easier. He looked toward the parking lot. "What did she look like?" Bree answered first. "Pale blue dress, dark hair. She left about 20 minutes ago." Harold closed his eyes. Then he opened them and said, "Stop the wedding." The string quartet had already begun the prelude. 120 guests were seated beneath the oak trees. Carol sat in the front row, smiling. Then Bree's assistant approached the musicians and raised one hand. The music stopped in the middle of a measure. Every head turned. My mother's phone began ringing again. This time, the groom's father was walking toward her with my name in his hand. Harold reached the front row before Carol could silence the phone. She looked up at him with the practiced patience of a woman being interrupted by someone beneath the importance of her day. "Mr. Calloway," she said, rising halfway. "Is something wrong?" He held the white folder against his chest. "Yes." The single word traveled farther than he intended. Carol glanced toward the garden entrance. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately." "We will," Harold said, "but first, where is Wendy Myers?" My mother's expression did not change, but she decided not to attend. "That is not what I asked." Harold had owned a print shop for 35 years. He was not loud, but he had the steady voice of a man accustomed to making people read what was actually on the page. "Where is she?" Carol straightened. "There was a family disagreement. Wendy left. Eric joined them." You told us Chloe's sister was unreliable. You said she might not show. She has a history of making important events about herself. Eric opened the folder. She paid for this venue. The words reached the second row. That is private. It stopped being private when you removed the person named on the contract from her own event. Carol lowered her voice. Eric, you do not understand the history. Then explain it. The bride was still inside the main house, waiting for the music to change. She had no idea the ceremony had stopped. Her phone had been collected with the bridesmaids' belongings, and nobody had yet told her I had arrived, been rejected, and left. Carol looked around at the watching faces. This is not the time. Harold stepped closer. That woman stood beside my bed while my heart stopped. She noticed what everyone else missed. She stayed when leaving would have been easier. And you just told a crowd she was not family while standing on ground she paid for. My mother stared at him. You know, Wendy? I know enough. For the first time that day, Carol lost control of her expression. Fear appeared openly. Not because Harold knew me, because an independent witness had entered the story. Someone she had not prepared, managed, or instructed. Someone whose respect for me existed without her permission. Aunt Renee began crying quietly. Eric noticed. You knew? He asked her. Renee shook her head, then nodded, which was somehow worse. I knew Wendy helped, she whispered. I did not know how much. How much? Eric asked. Carol cut in. Renee, stop. That was the moment Eric made his decision. He turned to Bree. Get Chloe. My mother stepped into his path. She is already nervous. You are not bringing this to her minutes before the ceremony. Eric's face hardened. It is her wedding. I am her mother, and I am about to become her husband. I will not start that marriage by helping you hide something from her. The sentence landed like a door closing. Bree sent an assistant toward the bridal suite. Inside, Chloe stood before a mirror while a bridesmaid adjusted the edge of her veil. She heard the prelude stop, then the silence stretch. At first, she assumed a vendor problem. Then she saw the assistant's face. What happened? The assistant looked toward the bridesmaids. Mr. Calloway needs you in the office. Eric? He is fine. Then what is wrong? The assistant hesitated. It concerns your sister. Chloe moved before anyone could stop her. She lifted her skirt and crossed the hallway in white satin, leaving her bouquet on a chair. By the time she reached the courtyard, several guests were standing. She saw Eric holding the folder. She saw Harold. She saw Carol blocking the office door. Then she asked the question my mother had spent 12 years preventing. Where is Wendy? Carol stepped toward her. Honey, there was an incident. What incident? Your sister became upset and left. Chloe looked at Bree. Did Wendy come? Yes. Was she on the guest list? Bree answered carefully. Her name had been removed this morning. By who? Nobody spoke. Chloe looked at Carol. Mom? My mother reached for her arm. I was protecting your day. Did you remove her? Carol lowered her voice. She was going to create confusion. How? She has complicated feelings about the family. Did she do anything? She arrived. Chloe pulled her arm away. That is not doing something. Eric handed her the folder. She read the first page. I have imagined that moment many times. My sister in her wedding dress, mascara perfect, veil falling behind her shoulders, seeing my name attached to the event she believed our mother had given her. Client of record, Wendy Myers. Her eyes moved to the payment ledger. $7,000, $4,600, $9,400, $21,000 total. She read every line, then she looked at our mother. You said Dad's insurance paid for this. I said we had resources. You said you paid. I arranged it. Wendy paid. Carol's voice sharpened. This is exactly why I did not want money discussed today. It changes the meaning of everything. Chloe stared at her. No, it changes who is telling the truth. Carol flinched. Chloe kept reading. My billing address, my card, my signature. My initials beside the authorization clause. She signed this 13 months ago, Chloe said. You knew her name was on it. Carol pressed both hands together. Your sister wanted to help quietly. Did she? She agreed. Did she ask you to tell me Dad's insurance paid? Carol did not answer. Chloe turned to Renee. What else did Wendy pay for? Renee looked at my mother, then at the floor. Some of your school. How much? I do not know. Did she pay tuition? Renee swallowed. I believe so. My sister's face changed. She later told me it felt as if every memory in her life had suddenly become evidence. The braces, the summer program, the laptop, the graduation flowers, my absences, our mother's explanations. Mom, she said, was there ever life insurance? Carol sat down. The silence answered first. Chloe repeated the question. No, my mother said. How long have you lied to me? I was trying to protect you. From what? From feeling indebted. To Wendy? To anyone. Chloe's voice rose. You made me hate her. I never made you hate anybody. You told me she chose work over us. She did choose work. She was paying our mortgage. Carol looked toward the window. You do not understand what happened after your father died. Then explain it. My mother's composure cracked at the edges. Your father left debts. The house was behind. We had nothing. Wendy offered to help. And you told her to hide it. She agreed. She was 22. So was I when I married your father. Adults make choices. Harold shifted, anger moving across his face, but Chloe raised one hand. She did not need rescuing. Did you ask for her schedule before family events? Carol's eyes lifted. What? My birthday dinners, the housewarming, Christmas. You always knew when she worked. That was coincidence. Did you send her invitations? Of course. Then why did I have to mail the wedding invitation myself? My mother stood. This is becoming hysterical. No, Chloe said. It is becoming clear. That sentence was mine in spirit, though she had never heard me use it. She turned to Bree. Can I use a phone? Bree handed her the office landline. My sister dialed my number from memory. At that moment, I was sitting in a booth at the Blue Line Diner across from Riverside Memorial. The pale blue dress felt absurd beneath fluorescent lights. A waitress had placed coffee in front of me and wisely stopped asking questions. My phone rang with the Arbor House number. I almost ignored it. Then I remembered the final packet and assumed Bree needed authorization for some technical problem. This is Wendy. For 1 second, I heard only breathing. Then Chloe said, Do not hang up. My entire body tightened. Chloe, where are you? Near the hospital. Why? I was deciding whether to work. A sound escaped her, part sob, part laugh. Of course you were. Are you all right? No. I sat straighter. What happened? I found the contract. Okay, I said. Is it true? Which part? The venue, college, the house, all of it. I closed my eyes. My oldest reflex rose immediately. Protect her. Minimize the damage. Move the truth to a safer day. Your wedding is about to start. We can talk after. Stop. Her voice broke so sharply that I pulled the phone away, then pressed it back to my ear. Stop protecting me from my own life. Chloe, that is how she did it. Every time you stayed quiet, she got to explain you. Every time you disappeared to keep me comfortable, she told me you did not care. I could not answer. My sister cried into the borrowed phone. I thought you hated coming home. I never hated home. I thought you missed my graduation because work mattered more. I was there. What? Last row. I came straight from the hospital. The silence on the line changed shape. The flowers? I bought them. My laptop? Yes. The braces? Yes. My tuition? Part of it. How much? 38,000. She made a sound like someone being struck. Why did you let me thank her? Because you were happy. I was wrong. You were 15 when it started, and you were 22. There it was. The mercy I had given everyone except myself. I looked through the diner window at Riverside. Work waited across the street, clean and uncomplicated. At the wedding, my mother waited with 12 years of edited history. Chloe pulled in a breath. Come back. I looked down at the coffee. I told Mom she would never use me like family again. Then do not come back for her. The words were quiet. Come back for me. I wanted to. That was the frightening part. Returning meant walking through the same gate where my mother had erased me. It meant facing relatives who had believed her. It meant standing in a room where every sacrifice could become public. Staying gone would have been easier, clean, final. Everyone is waiting, Chloe said. I do not want them told about the money. I do not care about the money. I do. I will not turn love into an invoice. Another silence. Then she said, I need my sister. Not the client, not the nurse, not the woman who paid. My sister. I placed $5 beneath the coffee cup and stood. I am 19 minutes away. Chloe began crying harder. I will be at the gate. No, I said. You are wearing a wedding dress. Stay inside. For the first time that day, she laughed. Bossy. I am an ICU nurse. I know. The sentence held 12 years of correction. I ended the call and texted Monica. I will not be coming in. Family emergency. She replied immediately. Go where you are needed, not just where you are useful. I carried those words to the car. Back at the Arbor house, Chloe returned the phone to Bree and faced our mother. Wendy is coming back. Carol shook her head. You cannot delay the ceremony for this. I already did. People are waiting. They can wait. You are embarrassing the family. Chloe lifted her chin. No, Mom, the truth is embarrassing you. Then she turned to Eric. When Wendy gets here, I want 5 minutes alone with her. You can have all the time you need. Harold opened the office door. Outside, guests rose as Chloe crossed the courtyard in her wedding dress. She walked past the chairs, past the stopped musicians, and toward the gravel entrance. My mother followed several steps behind. For once, Carol was not leading the story. She was chasing it. The drive back felt longer than 19 minutes. At every red light, I could still hear my mother saying, I was not really family. Part of me wanted to turn toward the hospital and disappear into a place where my name meant competence instead of controversy. Then Chloe's voice returned. I need my sister. The stone gates appeared ahead. Bree stood beside the welcome table. When she saw my car, she lifted the guest list, drew a line beneath the mark through my name, and wrote Wendy Myers in block letters. You are on the list, she said. I looked at the fresh ink. No one should have needed to write it twice. No, she said, they should not have. Chloe waited near the courtyard in her wedding dress, holding her skirt above the gravel. The moment she saw me, she ran. I barely closed the car door before she reached me. Her arms locked around my shoulders. I am sorry, she said into my neck. I am so sorry. You did not know. I should have asked. I should have told you. We stood between parked cars, both crying, each trying to accept responsibility for a silence our mother had designed. When Chloe pulled back, she saw the empty passenger seat. Your gift? I left it on the table. She took my hand and led me inside. In the office, Eric stood beside Harold and Pam. Aunt Renee remained near the wall. Carol faced the window, her champagne dress bright against the dark glass. Harold turned first. For a second, he simply stared. Then he pressed one hand to his chest. Bed 9, I said. The one who stays, he answered. He crossed the room and took both my hands. My family tried to find you, I know. The hospital could not release my information. You saved my life. I did my job. No, he said. You stayed. My mother closed her eyes. Harold turned toward the garden. There are 120 people waiting. They should know who paid for every chair. No. Everyone looked at me. I kept my voice level. The truth will be told, but not as a public execution. Chloe's wedding is not a courtroom, and my love is not an invoice. Harold studied me, then nodded. Chloe walked to the gift table and opened the small box. When she saw our father's watch, her face folded. She read the card aloud. Dad would have walked you down the aisle. Something of his should. She fastened the watch around her bouquet, then faced me. Walk me. My mother turned. That was supposed to be my place. Chloe did not raise her voice. You will sit in the front row. Wendy will walk me. Carol looked at me as if I had taken something. I had not. She had spent 12 years removing herself from that place, one lie at a time. The others left us alone for a moment. My mother stared at the window. I did not know how to be saved by my own daughter, she said. It was the first sentence she had spoken all day without decoration. You knew how, I said. You did not know how to admit it. Her shoulders lowered. I was ashamed. So you made me carry the shame. I thought I was protecting Chloe. You protected your image. She flinched. I continued before sympathy could erase the boundary. You will tell her everything: the mortgage, the tuition, the invitations, the schedules, the venue. You will tell her yourself before Christmas. If you do not, I will. And after that? After that, we see whether truth can support what silence destroyed. She nodded. There was no hug. Healing does not begin with a hug. It begins when nobody is allowed to edit the wound. Outside, the music changed. Chloe placed her hand through my arm. The doors opened, and 120 faces turned toward us. We walked beneath the oaks slowly. The ceremony began an hour late, yet nobody complained. Time had taken enough from us. As Chloe reached the arch, she squeezed my hand once, and I understood that 12 lost years could not be recovered, but the next 12 could belong to us. Whispers moved through the chairs, but nobody stopped us. At the front row, Carol looked up. Her face was wet, the church smile gone. Across the aisle, Harold stood and offered me his seat. Front row is for family, he said. I sat beside Pam while Chloe married Eric beneath the trees. The reception brought no public exposure. Harold kept the contract private. Eric treated me like someone he had always expected to know. Chloe and I danced to a song our father used to play while repairing things in the garage. Before the night ended, we made one promise. Sunday, 7 o'clock, phones on, no excuses. We have not missed a call since. 9 days before Christmas, Chloe received a thick envelope from Carol. It contained every transfer, every hidden invitation, every lie about the insurance, and every schedule she had used to keep us apart. My copy arrived 2 days later. At the bottom, my mother had written, "You were never invisible. I was afraid people would see what I needed from you." It was not an apology. It was the first honest diagnosis. I no longer send money without questions. I no longer apologize for naming what I give. I speak to my mother carefully, one true sentence at a time. Chloe keeps Dad's watch beside her wedding photograph, and I keep the guest list. My name appears twice. Once crossed out, once restored. That page reminds me that silence can resemble love while someone else is rewriting it as absence. So say the true thing while the people you love can still hear it. Family is not the person holding the pen. Family is the person who comes back, stands beside you, and stays.